what the Gospels have to teach us about connecting with God. I feel like we all struggle with this one, right? We know it's important, but how do we make it real? We've got some really incredible passages lined up from the Gospels. Hopefully we find some fresh perspectives and some practical takeaways that we can apply to our own prayer lives. I'm really excited to have someone who's spent a lot of time studying the Bible and the Gospels in particular.
Well, thank you.
So let's just dive right in. One of the phrases we hear all the time in church is praying in Jesus' name. It's almost become like a habit to tack it on at the end of our prayers.
Right.
But have we ever really stopped to think about what it actually means?
You know, in John chapter 14, verses 13 and 14.
Okay, so let me pull that up. John 14, 13, and 14.
Yeah, if you wouldn't mind reading that.
Okay, it says, "And whatsoever you shall ask in my name, that will I do, that the Father may be glorified in the Son. If ye shall ask anything in my name, I will do it."
Powerful words.
So clearly it's more than just a formality.
It is so much more than just a formality.
Yeah.
It's really about recognizing that we come to God through Jesus. You know, think about it like this. Imagine you want to meet with someone really important, maybe a high-ranking official or celebrity.
Okay, yeah.
You wouldn't just show up at their door expecting to be let in.
Right.
You would need an introduction, someone who knows them well and can vouch for you.
Like a VIP pass.
Exactly. It's like a
Yeah.
VIP pass. And that's what Jesus does for us.
That's such a good way to put it. I never really thought about it quite like that before. Okay, so moving on. Here's another passage that I think a lot of us can relate to.
Okay.
Matthew 6, verse 5 to 6 talks about how we pray, not just what we say.
Right?
Would you mind reading that one for us?
Absolutely. "And when thou prayest, thou shalt not be as the hypocrites are, for they love to pray standing in the synagogues and in the corners of the streets, that they may be seen of men. Verily I say unto you, they have their reward. But thou, when thou prayest, enter into thy closet, and when thou hast shut thy door, pray to thy Father which is in secret, and thy Father which seeth in secret shall reward thee openly."
You know, sometimes it's so tempting to make our prayers about being seen, especially I think in our social media age.
Yeah.
But this passage is like a reality check. You know,
Yeah.
it's saying, hey, are you praying to connect with God, or are you performing for an audience?
That's a great question.
I know I've been guilty of that.
You know, it's so easy to fall into that trap.
Yes.
But Jesus makes it very clear in these verses that God isn't impressed by outward displays of piety.
Right.
He's looking at the heart. He wants a genuine connection with us, not a performance.
Absolutely. Okay, so speaking of genuineness, there's that verse in Matthew 6, verse 7 about not using vain repetitions. What do you think Jesus is getting at there? I mean, sometimes we repeat ourselves in prayer.
Of course we do. But I think what Jesus is emphasizing here is the difference between mindful repetition and just mindlessly rattling off words.
Okay, so like I'll catch myself sometimes saying the same prayers over and over. I'm not really engaged with what I'm saying at all.
I think we've all been there.
And that's what we need to avoid, right?
Exactly. It's not about how many words we say or how long we pray.
Right.
It's about the intention behind our words. It's about really pouring our hearts out to God honestly.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay, so how do we make sure our prayers are coming from a place of genuine faith?
That's the key, isn't it?
Yeah. What does Mark 11, verse 24 say about that?
"Therefore I say unto you, what things soever you desire, when ye pray believe that ye receive them, and ye shall have them."
Oh, man, there's so much packed into that verse.
So much.
I think that part about believing that you receive them is just so powerful. It's almost like we need to envision the answer already happening.
It's about trusting in God's power and goodness, even when we don't see the results right away.
That's so good. And that actually kind of ties into the next point, which is about forgiveness.
Okay.
I think forgiveness is such a crucial part of prayer.
Absolute.
What does Mark 11, verse 25 tell us about that?
"And whenever you stand praying, if you have anything against anyone, forgive him, that your Father in heaven may also forgive you your trespasses."
Wow. So is it like holding on to unforgiveness is almost like putting up a wall between us and God?
That's a great way to put it. It's like trying to have a conversation with someone while you're still angry with them. The communication just isn't going to be clear or effective.
Right.
Forgiveness clears the air. It allows us to approach God with open hearts.
That's powerful. Okay, so we've talked about praying in Jesus' name, sincerity, avoiding empty repetitions, faith, and forgiveness. What else can we learn from the Gospels about how to pray?
Well, I think one thing that we often forget is the need to be persistent in prayer. Luke 18 talks about this.
Okay, let's hear it.
And he spake a parable unto them to this end, that men ought always to pray and not to faint.
So we don't just give up after one try.
No, we keep going. We keep knocking on the door. I love that persistence shows that we truly believe God can act and that we trust in his timing.
That's good. Okay, so finally, let's talk about perhaps the most important point of all,
Okay.
seeking God's will.
Yep.
What does Matthew 6 verse 10 say about that?
It's part of what we call the Lord's Prayer. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done in earth as it is in heaven.
It's so easy to get caught up in our own wants and needs when we pray. But ultimately, prayer is about aligning ourselves with God's bigger picture, isn't it?
It is. And when we seek God's will above our own, we open ourselves up to a life of purpose and fulfillment that we could never achieve on our own.
Absolutely. So just to recap what we've learned today.
Okay.
Effective prayer involves praying in Jesus' name, approaching God with sincerity and humility, avoiding empty repetition.
Right.
Praying with faith, forgiving others, being persistent, and most importantly, seeking God's will.
Powerful stuff.
It really is. That's a pretty amazing toolkit for connecting with God and deepening our relationship with Him.
Absolutely.
So as you go about your day, think about which of these principles really resonates with you. Maybe there's one that really stood out to you today.
Yeah.
And just ask yourself, how can I put this into practice? How can I align my prayers more closely with God's will?
Great question.
Because you never know how that might transform not just your own life, but the lives of those around you.
That's right.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive on prayer, and we'll see you next time.